Hey guys, Mark Allen, BHSpringSolutions LLC and BHSpringSolutions.com. 11 handgun calibers that we are going to test. And I'm taking responsibility and blame and credit for however this turns out. I instigated this, but I want to explain to you up front why I did. It all has to do with my favorite 9mm carry ammunition became unavailable, and it started this. And I'll tell you about it here real quick. Federal 9mm Luger plus P 147 grain. It's like the heaviest bullet, plus P, putting it in a muzzle. They say a muzzle velocity of about 1,050, pretty good for a 147 grain out of a 9mm Luger. And I carried this in my handguns for years. And over the years, you practice a little with it and you make sure your guns are, good to go with it. And I got myself down to about a supply of about like this, and it's not enough really. When I'm in a 9mm mode, it's not enough for the capacity that I carry with extra magazines for it to be all the same. So I started looking for it. It's not available today, and then I got to thinking, I don't really know if that's like the most destructive 9mm ammunition ever made or not. It just always seemed like it made sense to me. So I used it, and I never really questioned it after that. I don't just carry 9mm. I carry a 40 high power sometimes. I had been carrying a 180 grain Remington bonded jacket hollow point in that application. In 45, when I carry a 45, it was Federal's 230 grain standard pressure HST ammunition. And so and these other ones that I've been carrying are still available. I got to looking at all the 9mm ammo choices, and it just got head spinning very, very fast. And I hadn't really looked at what's available for quite a while. And the more I looked and the more I read and the more I researched, the more confused I got, and the more I watched bullets being stopped by ballistic gel. The more mind numb I got from that, and so I decided two things. First of all, because of who we are, BH Spring Solutions, and we have the safety fast shooting system that's for high powers and 1911s, what that does for me and what it does for a lot of BH veterans being anyone who's done business with BH Spring Solutions before or is a subscriber to our email newsletter, many understand is we have handguns where the manual of arms doesn't change from one to another. I'm going to show you real quickly what I mean by that. This is a 1911 Commander model. When I push the hammer forward, the safety's cammed up, it's now on safe. So I carry like this. When I'm ready to deploy and use the handgun, I pull the safety off like any cocked and locked 1911. I'm cocked, I'm ready to fire, but I don't have to carry with the hammer cocked that way because the hammer is carried forward. In my high power pistols, things all work the same way. All the controls are in the same places. Everything does the same thing. The manual of arms does not change from the 1911 to the high power design. This is a compact high power design, my current favorite 9mm high power to carry, and everything again functions the same. So when I got a question in my mind about what am I going to change to for 9mm ammunition, this was not just about 9mm ammunition anymore, because within these models, high powers and 1911s, we currently have in our shop a 1911 looks just like this one in 10mm. That's an option. So I have 10mm I can go to if I want to. And everything works and functions just like my reflexes are now trained to function just out of reflex to deploy one-handed if necessary, and put the firearm into action. Everything works the same. So in a 1911 I could choose a 10mm. I could choose I believe there's some 357 SIG chambered 1911s out there. I have a 357 SIG barrel for this 40 Smith & Wesson high power. So I've got 45 10mm, 40 Smith & Wesson, 357 SIG I can put into this one. We have a 1911 currently on hand that's a 38 Super. I've got 38 Super as an option, which is usually considered kind of a hybrid 9mm. I've got 9mm, of course. There's even a 1911 offering out there today in the new 30 Super Carry. So you start to see why this becomes a bit of a caliber subject for me and for a lot of BH veterans, because we all use, many of us, the similar kind of operating system that you just saw being used here, and it gives a broad range of possibilities as far as caliber choice. So when we start this, we're starting this as an 11 caliber shootout, or we call an 11 caliber max destruction shootout. That's my personal want for my carry ammunitions. The reason I want max destruction is because if I'm fortunate enough to be able to fast enough defend an attack, and I'm able to do the job, I want the handgun round that does its job best. In other words, is max destructive, so that any assailant, the chances of them changing their mind about this goes up the more destructive that particular caliber or caliber and ammunition combination is. And I do understand this part. I just couldn't get there by everything that I've seen shot and tested and things like that, you know, and what I watch on YouTube. The thing that I had to get very honest with myself about was this. Here at BHSpringSolutions, we are highly specialized in how to make these handguns in all of these calibers that I was just naming off. We know how to control the energy of those calibers in these handguns. We know how to regulate slide velocity with springs, and almost any caliber, almost any ammunition that you can name, and God knows the 9mm these days, the choices are endless, but almost any 9mm choice you can name off today, I can tell you how to spring a high power to handle it best, or where to start with your spring choices to regulate that slide velocity and handle whatever flavor of ammunition and caliber that it happens to be. We're specialized on the departure part, the departure of the bullet, meaning out of the handgun, and correct function, reliable function, performance. We're pretty good in that realm. But when I started trying to figure out, okay, what's my next carry ammunition going to be, what I got real honest with myself about quickly was, we haven't spent very much time studying the arrival end of any of these ammunitions. I haven't spent much time, frankly, analyzing the arrival end of my favorite 9mm ammunition I've been carrying for a very, very long time, or the 40, or the 45 that I carry. And so with all of these caliber choices that I have, and I feel like I can legitimately choose any of them, I decided that we would conduct an 11 caliber max destruction test. The max destruction test tries to put a test media in front of all of these calibers, and we're looking for max destruction. Very simple. A whole watermelon, pork spare ribs in front, pork spare ribs in back, 2 layers of denim in front of the whole thing, 1 shot into it, and we're going to analyze 11 calibers. We chose the exact ammunition that we're using by its available, its common bullet weight for the caliber, all standard pressure ammunition, and that's where we started. And we wanted to just simply see 11 calibers. What do these 11 calibers look like when we just take the carry ammunition of the day, if you will, whatever's, you know, widely available and common for the caliber? What do these look like when they encounter muscle, cartilage, fat, bone, high water content, just like the human body? What happens with these bullets? What happens with these calibers? Frankly, I would like to have the most capable caliber and ammunition combination. That's what I'm really looking for. But because I have choices and I can switch to whatever, 357 SIG. Changed nothing about anything as far as what I need to bring to the game, my own reflexes, my understanding about the manual of arms for the firearm, or what it may be. The 1911 design has so much margin in the original design. It can be chambered for a broad number of calibers, and has been. The high power pistol, 9mm, have a 30 Luger high power here. I have that as a choice. 40 Smith & Wesson and 357 SIG, all in a high power design, and I can choose any of them. And I'm looking for knowledge and understanding about the destructiveness and the destructive potential of handgun calibers and caliber and ammunition choices. And that's why we decided to conduct this test. I found all of this in my own ammo cabinet, and these were the choices I kind of had on hand for one reason or another. I got one here in 45, and it's green. These are, I guess, specifically for taking out zombies, is what I understand. So I'm kidding. Lots and lots of choices, and even some kind of exotic ones. And I was and am a bit humbled by my own lack of knowledge. We've spent almost 10 years in business studying and specializing in the departure. What happens when that bullet is in the gun, activated and leaving the gun? What all's going on there? And I haven't seen that much, honestly. I haven't learned enough on the arrival side. That's what this 11 caliber test is all about.
Seems like all handgun calibers sometimes don't work all that well. Here's a true story, and there's a lot more stories just like this one that you can find all over the place about handguns that did not stop a threat. In this particular instance, it was a handgun not stopping a threat. On the other hand, it was a handgun that did not succeed in killing a good girl in this instance. LAPD officer Stacy Lim was shot in the chest with a .357 Magnum. The bullet ravaged her upper body when it nicked the lower portion of her heart, damaged her liver, destroyed her spleen, and exited through the center of her back, still with enough energy to penetrate her vehicle door where it was later found. And still, Stacy Lim ran down her attacker, returned fire, killed him, survived, and ultimately was able to return to duty. Which handgun caliber accomplishes max destruction? BHSpringSolutions 11 caliber shootout will answer that question. We call this the BHSS meat watermelon denim test, and we wanted to give everyone a chance to take a look and review the handguns, the barrel lengths, the calibers, the feet per second that we chronographed, the various ammunitions that we used for this test, and what the calculations of the foot-pounds of energy, which is an interesting subject because it's not one that's focused on very much. We all know that it exists, but feet per second is very straightforward, so we tend to talk that. Bullet weight, straightforward, we tend to talk that. Caliber, straightforward, we tend to talk that. Foot-pounds of energy is a different measurement altogether, and it's a rather complicated formula, and you can find that online and Google it, or you can get just a converter where you put in the bullet weight and the velocity, and you'll get the potential foot-pounds of energy of that loading. But here's what I wanted to point out, and if you take a look, we've ordered those 11 here in smallest diameter to largest diameter, and that meaning the .45 ACP being the largest, the .30 or .3 the 30 Luger or the 30 Super Carry being the smallest diameters. Now, here's kind of where history has gone. Probably the first decade of my life, right down here, the .45 ACP. If you were shooting semi-autos and you didn't have a .45 ACP, well, whatever you had was less than. And later on in my lifetime, the 9x19 Luger round became popular, And then it became not as popular because it had some failures in some critical instances where it failed to stop bad guys. And in some rather, alarming kind of scenarios. And so 9x19 millimeter wasn't good enough anymore. And then we went to the 40 Smith & Wesson, and the 40 Smith & Wesson seemed like it did admirably for the years, and still is. But we've noticed that the popularity, like U.S. military, lots of law enforcement agencies, we've had advancements in bullet technology, and many of them have now gone back to the 9x19 Luger round. And so in other words, kind of, where we're at today is the 9x19 Luger round. You really don't need the 45 ACP. The 9x19 Luger is good enough, and it's impressive enough to, you don't really need a 40. A 9x19 is good enough. And then we have the 30 Super Carry come along in recent history, and their claim is that their ballistics are near that of the 9x19 millimeter. We look at here at the foot-pounds of energy of what we tested: 282 foot-pounds of energy of the 30 Super Carry and 301 of the 9x19. So sure enough, more feet per second, less diameter, and foot-pounds of energy that's in the same neighborhood-ish. And so this gets very confusing, I think, for a lot of people. It gets very confusing for me, because when you start looking at bullet size in terms of diameter, we used to have to be here, or it just wasn't good enough. And now, back down to a diameter of 0.30, we're being sold is good enough. So that's just part of the reason. I think you can understand a little bit about the confusion. We reordered all of those calibers by foot-pounds of energy as we tested them. And you'll see that the 357 SIG, it had 536 foot-pounds of energy. 10 millimeter 442. 40 Smith & Wesson we tested was 404. The 45 ACP 376 38 Super 360. Then 9x19 301. And then down from there. And I will say probably one that surprised me. I had thought that, in this respect, I was dealing with a little bit more potent round, but the 9x18 Makarov, in terms of the foot-pounds of energy and the ammos that we tested, and, Hornady critical defense is pretty, kind of top-shelf defensive ammunition. And so that one, didn't show up on the foot-pounds of energy calculation nearly quite as we thought that it would. So looking at these calibers from this perspective, will this make a difference? Will the 357 SIG look the most destructive in the test media? That's what we want to see, and that's what we want to find out. Now, I want to also just share with you this for some, just, trivia almost. A 50 AE, and this would be out of a 5-inch barrel handgun. Now, this is your Desert Eagle, the big boy that I affectionately call a hand cannon. 1580 feet per second with a 300 grain projectile, and that disperses or has 1,663 foot-pounds of available energy or energy potential. How's that compare to, say, the most popular AK round, 7.62 by 39? By the way, that's 30 caliber. 0.30 is 7.62. A 123 grain, 2450 feet per second, right in the same neighborhood as a 50 AE out of a 5-inch barrel. Interesting. And then your AR favorite, the 223, 55 grain. 3,250 feet per second, less on the foot-pounds of energy, 1,290, and then a 3-inch 12-gauge slug, 452 grains, by the way, and moving, 1760. Look at the foot-pounds of energy, my goodness. And by the way, these three and a 16-gauge with number 1 buckshot are also going to be tested in our media today. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to show what's the difference if you reach for the handgun rather than for some other more possibly more lethal alternatives for a home defense scenario. What are you giving up? What's the trade-off? When you do that, that's another question that I personally was most interested in to see, and that's kind of why we did this and why we went the directions that we did. So, if you had an opinion, if you were being a predictor prior to now about which one of these calibers would look the best in our testing, there's the foot-pounds of energy. Will it make a difference? We're going to find out.